Welcome back to our channel. Found a Washington quarter? Look closer, it might be a hidden gem. Like and subscribe for more valuable coin discoveries. In the humid summer months of 1985, a quiet hum echoed through the corridors of the United States Mint in Philadelphia. Rows of heavy machinery beat a rhythmic pulse as sheets of metal, precisely cut and carefully measured, fed into presses at relentless speed. It was a familiar cadence, practiced and refined through decades of minting, churning out quarter-dollar coins by the millions. These quarters, featuring George Washington's resolute profile, had become symbols of everyday commerce, passed between hands at vending machines, gas stations, and diners across the country. On their reverse, the iconic bald eagle stretched its wings proudly, perched on a bundle of arrows, encircled by the words, United States of America, and E Pluribus Unum. Nothing in 1985 suggested this batch would be any different. The mint's operations were unshaken by scandal or change, and the coinage system, though not immune to errors, was functioning with robotic efficiency. But somewhere, buried in the heart of routine, a minor misalignment slipped through unnoticed. Just one shift in the process, one moment where metal and die met with imperfect synchronicity. A subtle crack in the mechanical ballet. A blank planchet missed a beat. Maybe a die had worn down without detection. Perhaps it was the pressing of the reverse design at a slight angle, or a clash of dies without a coin in place. At the time, no one noticed. Not the mint's quality inspectors. Not the supervisors. Not even the conveyor belts that carried the coin away, sealed it in rolls, and dispatched it into circulation like countless others. It wasn't until years later that a middle-aged collector named Warren stumbled across it. He'd been sorting through a forgotten box in the attic of his late uncle's home in upstate New York, a modest man who had worked as a postman and kept coins in old cigar boxes, occasionally adding to them when a shiny or unusually struck piece caught his eye. Warren's hands, dusty and deliberate, picked up coin after coin, flipping them over beneath the dim attic light, more out of nostalgia than expectation. But then, something caught the edge of his attention. A 1985 quarter, duller than most, with a reverse that didn't sit quite right. He turned it over. The front was familiar, Washington, the date, the mint mark. But the reverse, Warren leaned in closer. The eagle looked misaligned, almost twisted. The arrows below it seemed to stretch unnaturally, as if pulled too hard in one direction. He brought the coin to a small desk lamp, the bulb buzzing slightly. The relief of the eagle's wings appeared off-center, shifted clockwise, crowding the inscription. The lettering seemed to dance along the rim, too close at points, too far at others. It was as though the entire reverse design had been rotated. And there it was, the beginnings of a revelation that would change Warren's path as a collector forever. He reached for his magnifying glass, the same one he'd used as a boy, and studied the coin for hours. He consulted old numismatic guides, scanned forums, compared photos from other quarters minted that year. The more he dug, the clearer it became, this wasn't a typical strike. This was a mint error. A rotated die error, to be exact, where the reverse design had been struck at an unusual angle in relation to the obverse. How had no one noticed this? How had it escaped classification or exposure? Driven by growing curiosity and a sense of inherited legacy, Warren took the coin to a local coin show in Albany. He approached the tables with caution, holding the quarter in a felt-lined box, reluctant to draw attention. When he showed it to a seasoned dealer with thick glasses and steady hands, the man's brow furrowed. He rotated the coin between gloved fingers and glanced at Warren. "This isn't a joke, is it?" he asked. "Where did you find this?" And just like that, a journey began, not just for Warren, but for the coin itself. Word began to spread slowly in numismatic circles. A few experts confirmed the anomaly. The coin was authentic, the error genuine. But unlike many known errors, this particular one had no published record. It wasn't catalogued in the usual references. Its discovery was virgin territory. In the months that followed, Warren received offers. Small at first, hundreds of dollars from casual collectors intrigued by its oddity. Then thousands, from dealers wanting to hedge their bets on its rarity. The value was climbing, though unpredictably. Some dismissed it as a curiosity. Others argued it could redefine how 1985 quarters were viewed in the community. Still, questions remained. How many were there? Was this a one-off mistake or part of a batch? The Mint had no public record of such an error for that year. No press releases, no recalls. Warren reached out to numismatic archives, scouring auction records and museum inventories. He attended larger conventions, coin in tow, always wrapped in careful hands, always hesitant to part with it. At one such event in Chicago, a collector from Oregon approached Warren after overhearing a conversation. He claimed to have seen a similar error, just once, decades ago, in his grandfather's jar of change. But he'd lost it in a move. The lead went nowhere, but it confirmed a tantalizing possibility. Warren's coin might not be the only one, but it could be the only known survivor. As time passed, its value continued to evolve, shaped by speculation and rarity. By the early 2000s, the coin was appraised at over $10,000. Still, Warren refused to sell, though auction houses reached out repeatedly. He kept it in a safety deposit box, visiting occasionally, more out of sentiment than finance. Its story became more valuable to him than its price. It was a relic of imperfection, a symbol of how even the most structured systems could falter in beautiful, unexpected ways, but the story didn't end there. In 2011, a numismatic researcher cross-referencing old inventory sheets from the Philadelphia Mint stumbled across an anomaly, a brief note from a technician about a malfunctioning press in mid-July 1985. It mentioned die rotation variance flagged but not traced. The record was buried in a maintenance log, unrelated to any official coin report. The implication was stunning. The error had been known internally, if only vaguely, and dismissed as minor. No follow-up investigation, no public record, and then came the twist. In 2016, a collector in Ohio brought forward a second 1985 quarter with similar characteristics: rotated die, reverse misaligned. Slightly less rotated than Warren's, but unmistakably part of the same mechanical flaw. This meant Warren's coin wasn't alone. But curiously, when the two coins were compared, slight differences emerged. Not just in rotation degree, but in detail clarity and rim thickness. Forensic analysis indicated they may have come from different dies affected by the same misalignment issue, possibly across multiple shifts, perhaps even separate weeks. This discovery split the numismatic community. Was there a pattern? Had the Mint been dealing with a recurring mechanical issue that year? If so, how many coins had slipped through, and where were they now? The lack of documentation only deepened the intrigue. Warren's coin, now referred to in forums as the first 85 twist, became the benchmark. Auction interest surged again. It was featured in magazines, online bulletins, and high-profile exhibits. Experts began estimating its worth between $25,000 and $35,000. The second known example sold privately for just over $19,000, further cementing the original's value, but Warren still hesitated. To him, selling felt like severing the thread that connected him to his uncle, to the attic, to that first flicker of mystery beneath a dusty lamp. He had come to see the coin not just as a rare object, but as a personal emblem of curiosity and legacy. That didn't stop him from engaging with the community, from offering lectures at collector clubs and fielding calls from appraisers. Then came another ripple, an unexpected one. In 2022, a third quarter surfaced, but this one bore a separate, even stranger flaw. In addition to the rotated reverse, the obverse featured what appeared to be a ghosted double image of Washington's profile, faint but visible under magnification. Experts called it a die clash, a result of the obverse and reverse dies striking each other without a planchet between them, leaving impressions on each other. If true, it meant the same faulty press had caused two separate error types, and at least one coin escaped bearing both. This third coin reignited a fresh wave of interest. If multiple errors stemmed from the same machine, the number of potential survivors might be higher than anyone had guessed. Or, inversely, the chaos of that single press might have been short-lived, producing only a handful of such anomalies before being repaired. No conclusive answer ever came, but what became clear was that Warren's coin was the earliest known, the most dramatic, and the most pristine. The twist in its design now felt like a twist in fate, pulling attention from the routine to the extraordinary. By the time specialists placed its market value above $40,000, Warren finally considered its future. Not for profit, but for preservation. He began discussing terms with a museum dedicated to American numismatics, one that promised to display the coin alongside its origin story, including handwritten notes from Warren himself about the attic discovery. He never spoke of the coin as a treasure. To him, it was a narrative, a fragment of history left behind by mistake and rescued by wonder. In the unassuming churn of daily operations at the Denver Mint during 1994, the machinery clicked and clanged with steady precision. Tens of millions of quarter-dollar coins were struck that year, each bearing the time-honored image of George Washington on the obverse, with the signature inscription, Liberty, across the top and the date tucked neatly below. On the reverse, the iconic eagle stood poised with wings spread, a symbol of national pride pressed into the metal with forceful certainty. Every die, every planchet, every mint mark served the purpose of uniformity. Coins were not meant to be individual stories. They were meant to be anonymous, functional, and replaceable. But even in the most controlled environments, a deviation can be born in silence and only revealed much later through persistence and a sharp eye. Among the millions that left the Denver Mint that year, one coin carried something unintended. Not a flaw visible at a glance, not a dramatic misstrike or a misshapen blank, but something far subtler, a slight but significant shift in how the reverse design met the obverse. The error was not registered, not flagged by inspectors, and not identified in the production notes. It made its way into pockets, cash drawers, perhaps vending machines, unrecognized and utterly ordinary. For nearly 2 decades, it remained lost in circulation. Forgotten, like so many others, until a retired machinist in Des Moines named Richard, who had turned to coin collecting in his later years, began reviewing coins from old coffee tins his brother had left behind. These were not curated collections, just daily change accumulated over years, quarters, nickels, dimes, many tarnished, most uninspiring. But Richard was patient. He enjoyed the quiet act of discovery. The slow rhythm of flipping, scanning, and sorting offered him peace more than purpose. He noticed the 1994 quarter because something about it didn't sit right. The eagle on the reverse appeared off balance. Not at first glance, but when he held the coin flat between his fingers and slowly rotated it, he noticed the misalignment. The reverse was rotated approximately 90 degrees from the obverse. A small yet significant deviation. Richard paused. He'd seen rotated die errors before in books and guides, but they were rare, especially in modern coins. He weighed it, measured it, compared it to others from the same year. The size and weight matched. The edge reading was consistent. It wasn't tampered with. It wasn't counterfeit. It was something else entirely. He shared the find on an online coin forum, attaching photos and asking for feedback. Replies came in cautiously optimistic. A few collectors asked to see videos of the rotation. Others requested exact measurements. One message stood out. A user named Numis Hunter commented, "If authentic, this is one of the most dramatic rotated dies I've seen from the 90s. Might be worth looking into seriously." That message sent Richard down a new path. He contacted a local coin dealer who confirmed what he suspected. The coin wasn't just an error. It was a high-grade, dramatically rotated die error from a year and mint not commonly associated with such flaws. News began to spread slowly. Word of the coin reached numismatic groups, where it sparked debate. Some questioned how such an error could have escaped detection for so long. Others wondered if more existed. As Richard's coin underwent third-party grading and certification, additional layers of interest formed. It graded at mint state, with minimal contact marks and near-pristine surfaces. This was not only a rare error, it was preserved unusually well. Soon, the story of the 1994 error quarter took on a life of its own. It began to appear in collector circles, featured in blog posts and newsletters. What elevated the intrigue was the coin's otherwise ordinary status. There were no historic events tied to 1994's coinage, no notable changes in design, and yet here was a standout specimen, one of the most pronounced reverse die rotations seen from that decade. As more eyes turned toward Richard's find, others began combing through their own stashes. A collector in Missouri claimed to find another 1994 quarter with a lesser degree of rotation, around 30 degrees, with signs of wear. It sold at auction for over $8,000. This set the tone. Even modest examples, if genuine, could command serious attention. The coin's value wasn't just in the metal. It was in the anomaly, the deviation from expectation. Richard, however, remained deeply attached to his coin. He declined early offers, some reaching into the $20,000 range. To him, it wasn't just about money. It was about the chance encounter with history, a personal brush with the mint's hidden narrative. The way a seemingly mundane object could ripple through a community and alter its understanding of an entire production year. He had become a part of that story, but there was a twist still to come. While researching similar mint errors, a numismatic historian contacted Richard with an odd request. He asked if Richard had noticed a subtle doubling on the obverse lettering, particularly on the word liberty. Intrigued, Richard took another look, this time under a digital microscope. Sure enough, faint but traceable, there were shadow-like impressions, evidence of a possible double die strike on the obverse. It wasn't extreme, but when combined with the rotated reverse, it raised questions about what exactly had gone wrong during the coin's minting. Was it an isolated die misalignment? Or part of a broader mechanical issue that went unaddressed? As experts reviewed the findings, some theorized that the coin may have come from a brief period of press instability, during which both the obverse and reverse dies shifted slightly out of alignment. The possibility of a double anomaly, a rotated reverse coupled with light obverse doubling, was virtually unheard of in modern quarters. Theories swirled, but evidence remained elusive. No other coin had surfaced with the same precise characteristics. Collectors responded with renewed energy. The coin was now more than just a rotation error. It was possibly the only known dual-error 1994 quarter in existence. Auction interest spiked again, with pre-sale estimates climbing well beyond previous offers. One broker representing a private collection floated the idea of a $90,000 purchase, but Richard remained unmoved. The coin, which had once rested unnoticed in a tin of spare change, was now regarded as a trophy within numismatic circles. Over time, its story became a staple at conventions and collector meetups. It was referenced in video essays, discussed in grading seminars, and even included in a publication on modern minting errors. Other rotated die coins from 1994 surfaced, though none matched the angle or condition of Richard's. Those that did appear sold for amounts between $12,000 and $26,000, depending on wear and rotation degree. But his coin remained singular, unparalleled in precision and preservation. By 2024, its estimated value had risen to between $40,000 and $98,000, depending on market conditions, buyer interest, and continued rarity. Yet it still rested in Richard's personal collection, housed in a custom acrylic case, occasionally shown to trusted guests and fellow collectors. Its presence served as a reminder that among billions of coins, one could quietly carry a secret for decades, and that sometimes, the sharp eye of a patient collector is all it takes to unearth the extraordinary from the ordinary. In the stillness of winter 2006, at the United States Mint in Denver, presses thundered through tons of blank discs with unwavering consistency. It was the fourth year of the ambitious 50-state quarters program, and this time, it was North Dakota's turn to be immortalized in pocket change. The design had been carefully selected after a lengthy process of artistic submissions and public votes, ultimately depicting two mighty American bison roaming a vast prairie beneath a rising sun. The landscape paid tribute to the state's raw beauty and rugged spirit, the animals nodding to North Dakota's natural heritage and historical ties to the plains. The coins were struck in the millions and sent across the country, intended to be spent, saved, traded, and mostly forgotten in drawers or coin jars. The production process, by then, was honed with mechanical precision. Minting errors were infrequent. The dies used to impress the design onto metal blanks were carefully prepared, monitored, and replaced when signs of wear emerged. But even under strict surveillance, machines falter, if only briefly. A single moment of pressure misalignment, one die held a fraction too loose, or a planchet that wasn't seated properly could cause subtle, rare mistakes. And that's exactly what happened with a small number of North Dakota quarters during that year, errors so discreet they blended in with the ordinary until someone truly looked. For nearly a decade, these mistakes remained invisible, swept along in the current of everyday commerce. It wasn't until 2014 that a quiet collector from Butte, Montana named Sarah uncovered something unusual. She'd inherited several rolls of state quarters from her father, who had collected them more out of habit than passion. Each roll was labeled by state and year, sealed and stored with care. On a snowbound evening, Sarah sat at her kitchen table, cup of tea beside her, sorting through the rolls to see if anything stood out. She didn't expect to find anything remarkable. The North Dakota roll was just one of many. But halfway through, a quarter caught her eye. The coin's surface shimmered oddly under the light, not in luster, but in relief. The bison appeared slightly distorted, almost ghosted, and the rays of the rising sun seemed to overlap unevenly. She flipped it over. Washington's profile on the obverse was slightly blurred, the letters around the rim doubled faintly in places. At first, she thought it was her imagination. But when she placed the coin next to others from the same roll, the differences became clearer. The design had been struck improperly, twice, in fact, but not in perfect alignment. A classic case of a double die strike. But there was more. A closer look revealed an additional anomaly. The edge reading was off-center, spilling slightly over onto the design itself, an extremely rare occurrence. It was as if the coin had been squeezed unevenly, the collar that holds the coin in place during the strike possibly misaligned. Sarah, stunned by her discovery, turned to her father's old coin books for answers. None offered much insight into a 2006 North Dakota quarter with such errors. She then turned to online forums, where photos of her coin sparked a flurry of discussion. Some dismissed it as post-mint damage, but others, more experienced collectors and even a few professional graders, suggested otherwise. One user posted, "If verified, that's a major anomaly." The State Quarters series had very few high-profile errors. This could be big. Sarah sent the coin to a reputable grading service. Weeks passed. Then the results came in, the verdict: an authentic double die error with collar misalignment, mint state condition, and virtually no contact marks. It was a rare specimen. Possibly the only one known with this specific combination of errors. The coin's journey shifted. No longer a novelty in a roll of circulated change, it had become a headline in the world of modern coinage. As word spread, the coin was featured in numismatic publications and local news outlets. Experts weighed in, calling it one of the most significant state quarter errors ever documented. While minor errors are not uncommon, one with this level of complexity and clarity was nearly unheard of. The design elements on both sides were visibly affected by the misstrike. The rays of the sun, meant to symbolize hope and dawn, looked almost like echoes of themselves. The bison appeared layered, as if in motion. On the obverse, Washington's jawline had a shadowed double, and the word "Liberty" showed a slight shift, the letters seemingly quivering. Collectors were immediately intrigued. Offers came quickly, ranging from modest sums to five-figure estimates. But Sarah, caught between disbelief and fascination, decided not to sell. She began attending coin shows, not to hawk the coin, but to learn more. She carried it in a secure holder, tucked deep in her bag, revealing it only to a few trusted dealers and experts. The coin was discussed in panels, examined under magnifiers, even displayed behind glass at a national expo. What made it more mysterious was the complete absence of similar known errors from North Dakota's 2006 quarter batch. No other examples had been certified or documented. A few quarters surfaced with very minor doubling or rim shifts, but none with the combination seen in Sarah's coin. This lent weight to a compelling theory, that her coin may have been produced during a very narrow window of mechanical failure, perhaps no more than a few dozen strikes, before the dies were adjusted or replaced. A numismatic historian dug through production logs from the Denver Mint for that year, finding a brief notation regarding press alignment correction logged in May. It didn't specify the exact design in production, but based on timelines, it lined up with the minting of the North Dakota quarters. This clue, though circumstantial, added intrigue. Could it be that only a tiny handful of such errors were ever minted, and Sarah's was the lone survivor? Years passed, and the coin's legend grew. Experts noted its combination of features had not been replicated in any of the other 50 state quarters. It became known among collectors simply as the Bison Echo. Articles referenced it with cautious reverence, describing how an error coin, otherwise born of accident, had risen to such prominence. And yet, it remained in Sarah's possession, quietly guarded in a temperature-controlled case, accompanied by grading certificates and media clippings. She never saw it as a windfall. To her, it was a gift, one last surprise from her father, wrapped in metal and memory. But she understood its value, not just as a rare coin, but as a representation of imperfection that told a perfect story. A coin that had escaped its fate and found its way into the hands of someone who noticed. Today, that coin is appraised between $30,000 and $78,000, depending on market conditions and collector demand. It remains unmatched in its detail and origin. And while others continue to search for its twin, none have surfaced. The coin is a reminder that even within a massive government-run minting operation, a single moment of error, barely perceptible at first, can create a legacy lasting decades, waiting patiently to be discovered by the right pair of eyes.